Hello and welcome. I am Alicia Ernstzen-Moolow of the Center for Innovation in Learning and Teaching here at UCT. I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Anandaroop Sen of the Department of Historical Studies at UCT. Anandaroop, thank you very much for agreeing to join me as a guest on this podcast, looking at how the various disciplines respond to generative AI in learning and teaching.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. I'm just going to jump right in. So, probably about 10 years ago, the worst thing we were looking at was students were, hiring people to write their essays or having friends do it or plagiarizing people's essays and that sort of thing. And suddenly, for a few years now, generative AI is the buzzword, and students are having generative AI write their essays. And obviously, historical studies, this is a big thing in the discipline. How did you and colleagues in historical studies and maybe even the broader faculty of humanities feel when you heard that suddenly ChatGPT and the like were going to be at people's fingertips, students' fingertips?
Well, we are at a loss, to be honest. I'm coming in from an interview with a student where the student admitted to AI use. So, in the last few years, particularly, it has become a very, very big problem. So we are struggling to think on our feet with this. Obviously, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but it's very difficult to manage this landscape right now because students don't necessarily see it as something which ought not to be a part of their work. And I don't blame them because it's a part of everyday, it's something which they have at their fingertips, and they are using it in many other things in their life. And so to separate it out as something which they ought not to be using for their work is perhaps a difficult concept to grasp. Not very difficult once you tell them that this ought not to be, but I'm saying that at some level, because it's a part of their everyday life, it's very difficult to then not use it. So, and we as educators, especially in history where writing is still a big part of expression and evaluation, we have been struggling with this. We have thought of new assignment structures. We have thought of, I know we've had a lot of help from CILT, particularly you, to think of, to look at the staggered nature of work rather than put in one document, for instance, as the final assignment, to have a sense of how students are thinking about the assignment and to have some sort of a written, proof that they're working on it. But even that is not a foolproof, mechanism to counter this. So and with I don't know, I can go on. So my initial, so I'll just wait for your other questions. My initial reaction to that question will be that it's been difficult, especially in the last couple of years. I teach a first-year course called Empires and Modernities, which is the history of the modern world from the 19th century to the 21st century. We have about 500 students now. It's very difficult to organize our courses and assignments right now, especially with bigger classes. With smaller classes, you can call people in where you have 30, 40 students. You can even think of having some sort of a regulatory mechanism with tutors and course convener. But with bigger classes, we are struggling.
Okay. That does make sense. And also, you're teaching a first year class, so you've got students coming straight out of high school. They've got their jump to university. In addition to that jump to university, you've got, 8 courses in the general humanities degree, and
Right.
you're working from assignment to assignment. What's the quickest way? Probably using generative AI. I mean, I know that historical studies, there's core skills that you're trying to teach with the essay writing as well. Do you think that there's any way that generative AI could actually help them with their core skills instead of undermining it? Are there different ways that they could potentially be using it that, without going, don't use it?
It's difficult at the first year level. There might be when we have to be creative, but as you very correctly point out, writing is still a very fundamental aspect of the discipline in history and and broader social sciences and humanities. So it's difficult to replace that fundamental skill. And in some ways, we can say that, and we have done this in class, that, we give them a question and we then put it in the AI, put it in GPT and see what chat GPT comes up with. And then we work on that. And we say, look, that these biases are inbuilt in the way that AI is feeding on information. So maybe it tells us something about how historical information is already out there and how it's coming into the system. So that's something which we try and nudge students towards. That in any case, a historian is also doing that work of moving through the archive and sifting the archive and reading it critically. So what comes through AI is also a process which the historian is also already involved in. So when you look at AI, when you put a question into AI, the answer which comes up, that in itself, the content in itself is not so much interesting, because it's a mean, it's an average of different things that it is feeding on, but it shows you the consensus or the kind of assumptions that are there in the historical field or in the commonsensical historical field. So we have tried things like that, but at the level of writing, it's really difficult, because I'm worried about one thing. If humanities degrees are to mean anything when students go out in the world, in employment, for employment, what and if students continue using this AI generative AIs for writing essays, what skills will they have at the end of a humanities degree? And that's a larger question, what AI is doing to employment in different spheres. So that's a very, very big concern that I have, and I think a lot of colleagues share that it has the potential to hollow out the potential skills that one could be acquiring when you come to UCT, and what it does to the UCT brand. What does it mean to actually have a degree, UCT degree in humanities, in 2026 or 2027 or in 5 years down the line?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, especially now with the AI detection tool being turned off. Like, I mean, there are other AI detection tools out there. Just because UCT has switched off the built-in one with Turnitin doesn't mean you can't use them. But at the same time, we know that AI detection tools are not foolproof. It's an algorithm. It's a guessing game, basically. It's not comparing one to one. But how do you feel about them turning the tool off? Do you think we should be embracing the space that we're in? Are the current academic integrity policies adequate for the new reality that we're living in?
No, we are playing catch up. And that's the problem with AI generally. We are bringing in 20th century regulatory mechanism to deal with 21st century technology. And that won't work. I mean, that's my sense. I mean, in my limited field as involved in the tertiary sector, education sector. But yeah, so turning off the AI detection tool, I understand the problem of false positives, but I think it's something which we needed to talk about a little more. That turning it off is not going to solve the problem. It is one thing to have a empathetic outlook towards students in the first year particularly, but it's something else to turn that AI detection completely off and leave us completely to our own devices to make this call, especially for big classes like 500, 600 students. I teach 500, 600 students in a class. Sociology, psychology has 1,000 students. At least it gave us some parameters of evaluation. What we were doing increased our work tons, but we were calling in students with high AI detection. We were not taking the AI detection as the final judgment, but we were being guided by it. And we were then asking the students to come in. Then we were having in-person interviews where I would just ask, okay, tell me what you wrote. Give me a sense of what you wrote. I mean, to do that for a class which is so big, it's anyway quite a task. Now, without the guiding principles of AI detection, and I understand the problem, and it's not a foolproof problem by a stretch, foolproof detection system by a stretch, but at least it gave us some guidance. Now you're left to, when you read, and when you're reading an essay, what I look out for is that the language suddenly is very mature for a first year student. But I can't go through 500 scripts, and there's a limit to moderation that I do. When tutors give me like 5 or 6 scripts from their group, which I look at. Without the AI detection system, that even that basic parameter is not available, and it makes life harder.
Yeah, can you imagine? You sound like you're sort of grappling, like,
Sorry,
what do we do?
I'm right. I'm in it as right now, because this is the 6th week of the course. Course is going well, but the evaluation, and we've already had to, there are many things happening. So we had the directive that UCT across the board has had to implement. I think it's a DHT directive. I might be wrong there. That we had to reduce the course credits. So course credit reduction for a layman person like I am, what it basically meant is that you have to reduce the number of notional hours. So 1 credit is equivalent to a notional hour of 10. That's the amount of work. So if it's a 15 credit course, then students are supposed to be doing 150 hours of work in a semester, in the course. Now, because we have to reduce it, we have had to reduce readings, we have to reduce assignments, so we have been struggling with the AI problem. But on the other hand, the reduction of the credit also forces us to reduce the content of the course in some ways. And so we are squeezed from different sides. So at one hand, in some ways, the executive and the larger directive is very student-centric, which I appreciate, because our courses are also designed like that. But then I think it's not recognizing the problem. I think the problem is generative AI rather than, the amount that a student reads.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there is also a misrecognition of the problem. So to not recognizing the centrality of generative AI as the definitive problem in humanities education right now and evaluation is something which we are struggling with. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that talking about student-centric and whatnot, lots of students struggle to write exams, and lots of people see it as, you just putting a bunch of information in your head and regurgitating it onto a page. So I know that historical studies adopted, writing a capstone assignment at the end of a course instead of going to sit in a theater and write exams. But I mean, considering that the capstone assignment could potentially be written by generative AI, is this something that might change again? Do you think you'd go back to written exams?
We did. Last 2 years, our external examiners, Chet Franch, who's an excellent external examiner from Stellenbosch, he suggested that we do. And for the last 2-3 years with the big course, with the first year course, we did go back to exam.
Okay.
But then there is also this, when students are course shopping, they are now looking out for courses which have exams, and they're trying to find courses which don't have exams, and they gravitate towards them. And now we have also this potential, there is pressure around retaining numbers. So departments in different degrees are responding to the pressure of retaining numbers, and the retention of numbers is now connected with a course having an exam or not. So while we would like to have exams to counter the generative AI problem, but there is also the other side where you want to retain numbers, and that is affected by keeping an exam at the end of the course. So this year I have gone back to coursework, where I'm going to ask students to submit at least 2 drafts. So when I'm looking at the final essays, I want to see the staggered approach, that it has some semblance of a palimpsest, that the work is increasing or expanding or building on something. So that's something which we have done, but now we are going back to coursework essay. So it's again, it's very difficult. We are pivoting from year to year, and we don't have a clear directive. There's a lot of devolution of responsibility at departmental levels, and we are, dealing with it as individuals. To be honest, as a course convener, I'm dealing with it in my individual capacity.
I mean, it sounds like it's a day-to-day sort of, we
Yeah,
take it as it comes, we
yeah,
see where it goes,
yeah,
we see what the central university tells us, what our faculty
yeah,
says.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, how are colleagues in the department and the faculty, how are they finding it? Do you know, perhaps?
No, of course, it's a common thing. I think my position isn't anomalous. It's not exceptional. It's something which, at least I know in my department, in departmental meetings, um we have had these discussions, and we don't have a solution. And we have different kinds of directives. On one hand, we have this, that we have to, the false positive thing the getting rid of the AI detection is another step. What I'm increasingly worried about, and this was bound to happen, when initially Chat GPT, what, 4 years back, when was it, right?
2022, I think.
Yeah, I think a colleague in the computer science department shared this interesting exercise. They wanted us to uh, share with him one assignment question, and he would put it to generative AI and see the answer, and then he wanted us to evaluate it. And I did participate in that, and the answer that was generated was about 60, 65 at best. So it was an average, which is a problem I'm made to understand across different fields, that the average production content generation is something the AI has very quickly been very successful at. But now, yesterday, I was going through a student's essay, and it's an 80% essay.
Okay. So it's getting better. Well, at least the
Yeah, I mean,
generative AI is learning.
yeah,
The student
yeah.
is not.
No, and in different, I mean, I was watching this YouTube video about this, where this professional pianist, he does this interesting exercise where he's trying to, he's given two versions of a tune, and he has to try and understand which one is AI generated and which one is, played by humans. I mean, he was successful in the 5 tries and the 5 pieces that he was given to, but he was saying that, come to me in a year, I won't be able to. I
Yeah.
don't think in 5 years, I don't think I'll be able to do this. So we are in a similar situation that, I looked at it, and then if I didn't call the student in, I wouldn't understand. We were going by the fact that, okay, the average, you know, is where the AI is in the last year or so. Now it is generating content which is 80%. And that, I don't know where to go with that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I suppose there is no answer. I mean, as we say,
Yeah.
it's a day-to-day
Yeah.
thing. And I mean, as the new models come
Yeah.
in, I mean, well, what does one do? What does one really do?
Mm.
So I don't know. I mean, how do you see AI shaping the future of the discipline? I mean, do
Yeah, that's a tough one. Tough one. I don't know. I mean, a more collaborative projects in terms of research, that's something which, we're still working in terms of peer review, and there's a basic integrity. I mean, some colleagues have suggested, and quite rightly so, that um, what you have to invest in is not so much the technology but a culture of integrity, which is quietly disappearing, because the lines are blurred in terms of what ought to be the way to approach one's work. And that has value, that you invest more in the value system rather than the technology itself, because we are not generating the technology to counter this, right? And we can talk till the cows come home and say that, oh, we'll incorporate generative AI in more discussions. Yeah, we will, to a degree, but at a first year course, there are limited, you know I mean, if you want to get rid of all evaluation systems, that's one. People come in, it's a public lecture. We as professional expertise, we give lectures, and we don't have any evaluation system at all. That could be one way to go, and these become just public lectures that students come in and they listen to it. And if they want to have engagement we have a structure of engagement around tutorials, but these are all voluntary engagements. We do away with any form of evaluation. But then we also have to think, what are we doing with our degrees? Why will people pay money to come to UCT if the brand, because there's a branding question also. Executive was always worried about that. Oh, okay, UCT brand. But if it's hollowed out from inside, what does it do to the brand? Then we have to think very deeply about not just the humanities, but what will universities do?
Yeah. Look, I mean, these are all very important questions as well. I mean, what does the university look like 10 years from now? Does the university exist 10 years from now?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Um, I mean, what you were talking about earlier as well, I suppose you could also, you incorporate generative AI into how you do your assignment, where you teach the student, okay, prompt, what is the, chatbot or whatever it is say, and then you take it from there, and the student could have to, I don't know, analyze it or critique it or whatever that may be. And I suppose if it's at 80%, it's a good essay that the student is critiquing, but at the same time, it's not ideal. It's never going to be ideal, but at the same time, this is kind of here to stay now.
Yeah.
So I am sorry that you feel like you have to pull your hair out and where do we go from here? And I obviously don't have the answer to that. And I don't know, but I guess how do you think your view has changed since that initial, oh my goodness, this is now, on the student handset, to today where you're sitting here and reflecting on it? How do you think your view of generative AI and the accessibility of it has changed?
The accessibility is much more, right? You would know much better, but I feel that students have that, and obviously in such an unequal society, it gives a false sense of equivalence, right? That's also a big problem, that people think that the access to AI it's grafted on a very unequal society, right? That's the problem, and I think that's what we need to also address. That while we're talking about generative AI in terms of, of many things, but the reality, historical reality, and the contemporary reality of South Africa and the world at large doesn't disappear because of these technologies. And these technologies are grafted onto those very, very uneven fields. So I'm quite curious about how that plays out, in terms of question of access, not just in access of having access to it, but once you have access, how it feeds into the inequalities of the system. That's something which I'm curious about I want to think more about and want to understand more. Otherwise, at some level, I think there is I would like to believe, again, because I'm drawing from different other parts, there was sorry, this will be a little circuitous answer to your question, if it is an answer at all. I was reading this, I watch a lot of football, I play a lot of football, so read a lot of football as well. And these Guardian reporters are lovely writers. There's this writer called Barney Ronay, and he talked about this dummy that Dominic Szoboszlai, this Liverpool player, recently performed and final last-minute goal in a Liverpool match. What he was saying through that dummy, a dummy is something which does not, register in the statistics as a particular action. So it's not a goal or assist. It does not register in the system as something which a player has done, but it still affects the system in a very fundamental way. When you faint and dummy. So he was saying that sense of play, though more and more football is being systemized, and these are systems, and the individual maverick is going out of the game. I felt similarly about the AI problem right now. And I hope that there will be that sense of play and that sense of contingency, the sense of accident, which will always be there despite the standardizing nature or the impulse or the imposition of AI and generative AI. And I think that's where my optimism lies. It's not a lot that I'm actually in effect, I'm saying that my hope lies in accidents, but I feel that accidents are very constitutive of human history. So, and we don't know how this is going to play out. We really don't know. It takes about, it's been 100 years, 50 years, 25 years, I don't know. We will get to know how it affects our political systems, though we are seeing that it is doing that, how it's affecting our sense of coming together in one place, more and more. I see that in class. People, I have a class of 450 students. I have 150 to 200 students, or 150 students at best on most days. I mean, it might be that I'm a very bad lecturer, so that could be very well so. But it also is a effect of this mediated screen lives that we have. It has affected how we come together. But anyway, there are many. It's an open question. It's an open future, which we are all struggling with, and we know the huge investment in AI, the $1 trillion investment, people like Elon Musk and their political alignments doesn't bode well. But there is always play. There's always accidents. There's always the element of human is in the contingency. So I'm kind of hopeful around accidents.
Okay, that's one way of putting it. Look, I mean, I noticed when you were answering that question now, you called it the AI problem. So it definitely tells me, okay, this is, I mean, obviously what you've said as well, but 100% this is where you're at. And yeah, I do know that time is a bit limited. So unfortunately, we do have to cut the conversation short. I have really been enjoying it. Thank you for that. But is there anything to end off? Is there anything that you would want someone who is listening or watching to be left with? Or if a student of yours perhaps is listening or watching, is there something you'd like them to hear from you?
Don't use AI in the essays. That's the first. But more seriously, it's a problem that we are struggling with. So we need to have honest conversations. I think that's my thing. That that's what I think. Our colleagues, some of our colleagues talked about value judgment, or investing in values around work. Initially I thought, okay, how do we do that? That sounds too abstract. But but that is something. I think we need to have an honest conversation of what we want out of education, reading, learning, and doing it together. I think generative AI is also another form of extreme individuation in a very screened world, which is and you have consequences of that are, I mean, one, mental health is a huge consequence of that. And I've read, apocryphal, but, worrying stories about how younger people are pushed by AI into different kinds of very dark places. So it's a very tricky field. So, and if we navigate it together, and that means talking about it honestly, talking about the inability to do something, but not use it as an easy crutch, though it's right there, that would be the place to start. Yeah. And see where it goes. I mean, I don't know, and I don't think anybody does. I don't think Elon Musk does. I don't think anybody who's honestly thinking about the immediate and the not so immediate future. I think we have to think about what we are doing.
Okay. Thank you, Anandaroop, and thank you so much for fitting us into your very busy schedule. And thank you very much to those who are listening and watching. I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I have. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Alicia. Yeah, no, I really, this was fun because it made me think also, because, you're immersed in the everyday and you're trying to just douse fires. But yeah, okay. Thanks. Yeah, this was great.